Have you ever noticed how fast we react in daily life? Someone cuts us off in traffic. A coworker makes a snide comment. A stranger skips the line at the store. And before we even realize it, we're already reacting. Our heart races, our face tightens, maybe even words fly out before thought has a chance to arrive. It happens so fast, doesn't it? Like a spark meeting dry wood, one instant and the fire is already lit. This is how many of us live, locked in a constant cycle of stimulus and reaction. Action and counteraction. Something triggers us and we react, almost automatically. And it feels justified in the moment, right? After all, they shouldn't treat me like that, or I have to say something back. But here's a deeper question. What if reactivity is not strength, but weakness in disguise? What if true power isn't in our reaction, but in our ability to pause? The Buddha once said, "A fool is known by his speech, and a wise man by his silence." Such a simple sentence, and yet it carries a profound truth. Because silence here doesn't mean avoidance. It doesn't mean weakness or submission. It means presence. It means observation before reaction. It means choosing not to be a puppet of every emotion that passes through us. Imagine for a moment that your mind is like a clear pond. When it's calm, it reflects the sky, the trees, the world with perfect clarity. But when it's agitated, when stones of anger, fear, or pride ripple the surface, it becomes distorted. We can't see clearly. We lose ourselves. Now let me ask you something personal. Think back to the last time you reacted strongly to something. Did it bring clarity? Did it bring peace? Or did it escalate the chaos internally or externally? Because the truth is, most of the time we are not reacting to the present moment. We are reacting to a pattern, to a wound, to a memory of not being respected, not being heard, not being seen. The current moment is just the spark, but the firewood was already stacked, dry, and waiting. So what if, instead of reacting, we learn to observe? To simply notice the surge of emotion without letting it hijack our voice, our actions, our pace. This isn't about being passive. It's about reclaiming your power. It's about being deeply present, even in moments of discomfort. It's about discovering the space between what happens and how we respond, because in that space lives our freedom. And maybe, just maybe, silence isn't the absence of power, but the presence of it. In today's video, we'll explore what Buddhist wisdom teaches us about this path. Not the path of suppression, but of observation. Not escaping emotion, but meeting it with awareness. How to stop reacting and start truly seeing. How to choose clarity over chaos. And how that one shift from reaction to observation can begin to change everything. Take a breath. Let's begin. Observe instead of reacting. Have you ever been in a moment where someone said something sharp or unkind, and before you could even think, you snapped back? That automatic reaction, it feels like it happens to us, right? Like we are passengers in a fast-moving train of emotion we never chose to board. But here's something powerful to consider. Not reacting doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're deeply aware. It means you're practicing strength on a level most people never reach. In Buddhist teachings, there's a beautiful word for this kind of calm resilience. Equanimity. In Pali, it's called upekkha, a quality of inner steadiness, like the eye of a storm. Everything may be chaotic around you, but you remain centered, spacious, unmoved. This isn't cold detachment. It's not pretending not to care. It's learning to care with clarity. To respond with intention, not impulse. Think of your mind like a lake. When the surface is still, it reflects the sky perfectly. But the moment it's disturbed by wind, by a stone, by someone's harsh words, the image becomes distorted. In that same way, when we are reactive, our perception gets cloudy. We stop seeing clearly both the world and ourselves. I remember once, someone criticized a project I had poured my heart into. I felt my chest tighten, my jaw clench. My mind immediately raced to defend, explain, prove. But something in me whispered, wait. Don't jump into the storm. So I paused. I breathed. I listened. And in that space, I realized their comment wasn't about me. It came from their own stress, their own filters. And my silence. It gave both of us room to breathe again. You see, silence isn't emptiness. It's full of wisdom. Like the Buddha said, a fool is known by his speech, a wise one by their silence. So next time your heart starts to race or your fingers itch to send that angry text, pause. Ask yourself, is this reaction truly coming from who I am or from a wound I haven't healed? When we observe instead of reacting, we step into that still lake within us. We begin to reflect not just the noise of the world, but the truth beneath it. And the more we practice this, the more our silence becomes a shield, not a shutdown. It becomes a place where peace isn't just something we seek. It's something we embody. The space between stimulus and response. Let me ask you something real. When someone snaps at you, do you immediately snap back? When life pushes, do you instantly push harder? Most of us do. It's not a flaw, it's just conditioning. But here's the problem: when we live in that reflex, we give away our peace. Worse, we give it away to the very people or situations that disturbed us in the first place. There's a saying I love, often attributed to a Buddhist monk. Why should I let someone else's anger control my peace? Simple, but powerful. Because here's the truth: the space between what happens and how you respond, that space is everything. And in that space lies your greatest freedom. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, put it beautifully. Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Let that sink in. It means you're not a puppet of your emotions. You have the power to pause, to breathe, and to choose something wiser. Imagine this. You're driving, someone cuts you off. Your body reacts. Tension rises. Maybe a few choice words fly out. But what if, instead of reacting, you simply noticed the heat rise, felt it, and then let it pass? Like a wave that came and went. No drama. No damage. Just presence. That moment of pause, it's small, but sacred. It's where the storm loses its grip and clarity returns. You see, emotional reactivity is like a match struck too fast. Instant heat. But also instant burn. Creating space means you don't strike the match. You hold it. You observe it. And eventually, you set it down. The Buddha didn't say, don't feel anger. He taught, don't be possessed by it. To feel is human. But to react blindly, that's optional. So how do we create that space? First, pause. Just 1 second of awareness is enough to shift the entire direction of a conversation or a day. Second, breathe. The breath anchors you to the now. It grounds you before your mind races off. Third, witness what's alive in you. Is it anger? Fear? The need to be right? The need to be seen? When we shine light on those inner movements, something magical happens. They lose their grip. And you regain your center. It's like building a muscle, the muscle of presence. The more you practice, the easier it becomes to stand in that space with grace and choose who you want to be. So next time life pushes, pause. Breathe. And remember, you are not your reaction. You are the awareness watching it arise. Observe like a mirror. There's a beautiful teaching from the Buddha that stays with me every time I feel my emotions begin to stir. He said, the mind is like a mirror. It reflects everything, but it holds on to nothing. Let that image land for a moment. Imagine your mind not as a battlefield of thoughts or emotions, but as a clear, calm mirror. A mirror doesn't cling. It doesn't judge. It just reflects. Now think about how most of us respond when we are provoked. Someone criticizes us. We feel it instantly, a tightening in the chest, a flush of heat in the face, a surge of words on the tip of the tongue. And before we know it, we've reacted. We've said or done something we later regret. But what if, instead of reacting, we simply reflected? There's a story from Zen tradition. A young student, full of frustration and pride, storms into the meditation hall. He yells at the master, blaming him for not understanding, not listening, not guiding him properly. But the master doesn't yell back. He doesn't defend. He just looks at the student, silent, calm, still. That silence became a mirror. And something amazing happened. The student, instead of being met with resistance, was met with presence. He saw himself clearly for the first time, not through criticism, but through reflection. And in that space, his anger melted. Tears followed. Not from shame, but from awakening. Sometimes, the greatest transformation doesn't come from words, it comes from someone not reacting. You see, when we stop trying to fight or fix or justify, we actually allow space for truth to emerge. And here's the deeper insight. When we observe like a mirror, we not only avoid unnecessary conflict, we become a source of clarity for others. Our silence becomes an invitation. Look. This is what's alive in you. Are you willing to see it? This kind of observation requires strength, not passivity. It's not about suppressing your voice or becoming a doormat. It's about choosing not to absorb someone else's chaos as your own. It's emotional aikido, letting the energy move through you, not into you. Of course, this isn't easy. Especially if you were raised to always explain yourself. To defend your worth. To prove you're right. But a mirror doesn't need to defend. It already is. It reflects and then it returns to stillness. So next time someone throws their storm at you, pause. Don't rush to meet them at their level. Instead, become the mirror. Notice the emotion. Let it be seen. But don't let it define you. Because here's the secret. You are not what rises in you. You are the awareness that sees it rise and watches it fade. The root of reaction, ego, and woundedness. Why do we react so quickly, so fiercely, sometimes over the smallest things? Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, what exactly am I protecting right now? More often than not, the answer lies in a part of us we rarely acknowledge out loud. The ego, that fragile inner voice always whispering, I need to be right. I need to be seen. I need to matter. When someone challenges our opinion, dismisses our feelings, or ignores our efforts, it's not just disagreement we feel. It's a threat to our identity, our worth, our sense of self. And when the ego feels threatened, it doesn't stay quiet. It strikes. It reacts. Like a reflex. Like a fire alarm going off inside us. But here's the thing. That reflex doesn't come from strength. It comes from pain, often unhealed pain we carry deep inside, sometimes from years ago. Let's be honest, many of our emotional outbursts are not about this moment, but about something older that this moment touches. A tone of voice that reminds us of a parent who never listened. A look that triggers a memory of rejection. A disagreement that echoes a past betrayal. We react not just to the present, but to the story we've attached to it. This is where Buddhist wisdom offers us a radical alternative. To see the ego not as our enemy, but as our teacher. A signal. A mirror. Every time you feel that surge of anger, defensiveness, or urgency to prove yourself, that's your ego saying, I'm scared. I don't want to be invisible. I don't want to feel small. And the deeper truth. You don't have to react. You can pause. You can breathe. You can say to yourself, this is just my ego trying to protect an old wound. And in that awareness, something shifts. You no longer become the reaction. You become the observer. There's a quote I love. If someone calls you a tree, do you get offended? No, because you know it's not true. So why get offended when they call you something else? What we react to often says more about our attachment to identity than the situation itself. The more tightly we grip who we think we are, the more easily we are shaken. But when we loosen that grip, when we allow ourselves to just be, without needing to be right or validated, we start to find something deeper than ego. Peace. So the next time you feel triggered, ask yourself gently, is this really about now? Or is this about an old pain I've been carrying too long? Your reaction is not weakness. It's just a messenger. And your awareness is the healer. The 4-step practice to transform emotional reactivity. Have you ever felt a wave of emotion rising so fast that by the time you even noticed it, the damage was already done? You said something you didn't mean. You snapped. You shut down. And afterward, you thought, why did I react like that? Here's the truth, emotions aren't the problem. It's the speed at which we let them take over. But there is a path out of this cycle. A simple but powerful 4-step practice rooted in mindfulness, a way to move from reactivity to awareness. Let's break it down. Paused, breathe, labeled, observe. Step 1. Pause. Before you speak. Before you type. Before you lash out. Just pause. It might feel unnatural at first, like you're holding something back. But this tiny moment of non-action is where your power begins. You're not repressing. You're creating space. Like that famous quote goes, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. The pause is your entry point to freedom. Step 2. Breathe. Bring your attention to the breath. Inhale. Exhale. Feel the air enter your lungs, feel your chest rise and fall. This isn't just a stress relief technique, it's a reconnect ion. Your breath brings you back into your body and out of your spinning thoughts. Even just 3 conscious breaths can shift your entire nervous system from fight or flight to grounded presence. Step 3. Label. Name what you're feeling, silently, gently, like a narrator watching from the outside. This is anger. This is fear. This is sadness. Why label? Because naming the emotion creates distance. You move from being angry to noticing anger. You're no longer swimming in the storm, you're standing on the shore, watching the waves. Neuroscience backs this up. Studies show that when we label emotions, activity in the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, decreases. In simple terms, naming helps calm the storm. Step 4. Observe. Now, turn inward. Ask, what does this emotion feel like in my body? Is your jaw tight? Shoulders tense? Chest heavy? Where is it sitting? How strong is it? Just observe, don't judge or analyze. You're not trying to fix the emotion. You're allowing it to move through you like a cloud in the sky. Because here's the miracle. When you don't feed an emotion, it begins to fade. Just like a fire without wood, it burns out. Not because you fought it, but because you watched it with compassion and presence. This 4-step practice isn't just a momentary tool. It's a life skill. One that can help you navigate arguments, conflicts, anxiety, even your own inner critic. You don't have to be perfect at it. You just have to start practicing. Start noticing. Start choosing. Because every time you pause instead of reacting, every time you breathe instead of exploding, every time you observe instead of absorbing, you're building a new emotional muscle. A quiet, grounded strength that nothing outside of you can shake. Observing with compassion. You know, it's one thing to observe yourself. To pause, to breathe, to name what's happening inside. That alone is powerful. But real transformation begins when we take one step further. When we start observing others with compassion. It's not always easy, right? Especially when someone lashes out at us, harsh words, cold silence, unkind eyes. The natural instinct is to protect ourselves. To judge. To strike back. But the Buddha offered a different lens, one that has the power to change not just your reaction, but your heart. He said, hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal law. Let that sink in for a moment. So what if the person yelling at you, the coworker making passive-aggressive remarks, the loved one who keeps disappointing you, isn't evil or broken, but simply hurting? What if what looks like aggression is really pain wearing a mask? This doesn't mean we excuse harmful behavior. It doesn't mean we become doormats or pretend that pain doesn't exist. But it means we choose not to let their pain infect our peace. There's a practice in Buddhism called metta, loving kindness. And one of its simplest forms is this silent mantra. May you be free from suffering. May you be at peace. You can say it in your mind when someone triggers you. It's not for them, it's for you. To keep your heart soft, even when the world feels hard. Let me share a simple story. A monk once sat in the village square. A man approached and began insulting him, yelling in his face, trying to provoke a reaction. But the monk simply looked at him, calmly, and said, If someone offers you a gift and you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong? That silence, that steadiness, didn't come from weakness. It came from understanding. From seeing the other not as an enemy, but as another human, caught in their own storm. Now let's bring this home. Think of someone in your life who's difficult to love right now. Maybe they've hurt you. Maybe they are constantly negative. What happens when you stop judging and start observing through the eyes of compassion? Can you notice their tone without absorbing it? Can you see their pain without taking it personally? Can you let their anger rise and fall while you remain anchored? It takes practice. It takes a willingness to stay open in a world that often tells us to harden. But here's the beauty. Compassion isn't weakness. It's clarity. It's choosing not to carry someone else's burden as your own. It's drawing boundaries without building walls. So the next time someone stirs your anger, pause, breathe, and instead of "what's wrong with them," ask, "What pain might they be carrying that I can't see?" You don't have to fix them. You just have to refuse to become them. Because the more you observe with compassion, the more you dissolve the illusion of separation. And in that space, you don't just stay calm. You become a healing presence in a world that deeply needs it. Silence is a conscious choice. Have you ever been in a conversation where everything in you wanted to fire back? To explain? To defend? To prove you were right? We've all been there. Because we've been taught that silence means defeat. That if we don't respond, we lose. But here's a radical thought. What if silence isn't weakness at all? What if silence is the highest form of strength? There's a quiet kind of power that comes from not needing the last word. From choosing not to argue, even when you could. From letting the noise pass through you without it disturbing your peace. And that's not suppression. That's clarity. That's freedom. You see, true silence, the kind that comes from inner awareness, is not the absence of sound. It's the absence of ego. It's the moment you realize, I don't have to react. I don't have to prove myself. I already know who I am. In Buddhist teachings, there's a profound respect for noble silence. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of mastery. There's a story of a student who came to his teacher, full of anger and demands. He spoke for minutes, complaining, blaming, trying to provoke. But the teacher simply sat, calm and unmoved. Eventually, the student grew quiet, confused by the stillness. And in that silence, he saw himself, his own agitation, his own suffering. That's the gift of stillness. It reflects rather than reacts. So, ask yourself this. How often do you speak just to fill the discomfort? To avoid looking inward? To keep the ego alive? Can you instead pause and listen not just to others, but to yourself? Can you let silence speak for you? Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Let me be clear, choosing silence doesn't mean tolerating abuse. It doesn't mean avoiding necessary conversations. But it means knowing when your words come from wisdom and when they come from wounded pride. It's the difference between speaking with purpose and speaking just to be heard. And when you stop letting the ego hijack your voice, you speak less, but with more weight. You react less, but with more clarity. And you live more from peace, not pride. So, the next time you feel pulled into an argument, pause, breathe, and ask, is this moment calling for my voice or my silence? You might find that silence, chosen consciously, says everything that needs to be said. Observation as a way of life. What if I told you that true peace isn't found in some mountaintop retreat, but right here when you're washing dishes, walking to your car, or listening to someone speak? Most of us think that mindfulness is something we do when things go wrong. When we are angry, overwhelmed, or about to say something we'll regret. But what if observation wasn't just a reaction? What if it was a way of living? You see, observation isn't only for crisis moments. It's not just a spiritual tool to pull out when you're about to explode. It's a way of being. A quiet thread you weave through your day, moment by moment. Imagine this. You're washing the dishes. instead of rushing through, already thinking about the next thing. You feel the warm water on your hands. You hear the sound of the plates clinking. You breathe and you just here. That's not trivial. That's training. Because mindfulness doesn't begin when we're upset. It begins when we are calm. It's built in the quiet, ordinary moments. Like walking down the street, can you feel your footsteps? Can you hear the rustle of leaves, the passing voices, the rhythm of your breath? When someone speaks, do you listen to respond or to understand? These are not just exercises. They are invitations. To return. To presence. To yourself. In Buddhist practice, this is called living with awareness, living as if every moment matters. Because it does. And when you make this your way of life, something shifts. You don't get knocked around by life's storms so easily. You don't reach for distractions every time discomfort arises. You become rooted, steady, present, grounded. So here's a gentle reminder. You don't have to wait for a moment of tension to practice mindfulness. You can begin now. In this breath. In this very ordinary second. Next time you're doing something mundane, folding laundry, sipping tea, driving in silence. Don't rush through it. Don't tune out. Tune in. Because every mundane act is actually sacred. When seen through the eyes of awareness. Let me leave you with this reflection. How differently would you live if you treated each moment as the only one that matters? Try it. Not for a week. Not even for a day. Just for one breath at a time. And notice what begins to unfold. Cultivating inner strength over time. Let's be honest, sometimes we wish peace was like a light switch. Just flick it on when life gets messy. When someone pushes our buttons. When anxiety creeps in. When anger knocks at the door. But real peace isn't a switch. It's a muscle. And like any muscle, it doesn't just appear. It needs practice. Repetition. Daily care. That's the difference between a temporary trick and a lasting transformation. Not reacting isn't something you decide once and master forever. It's a path you walk a little more consciously each day. And like any real journey, it begins with small steps. You meditate, not to be perfect at it, but to gently train your mind to sit still amid the noise. You breathe deeply, not just when overwhelmed, but throughout your day, so that when storms arrive, your breath knows the way home. You journal, not just to vent, but to understand what's truly living under your skin, your fears, your hopes, your old wounds still shaping new reactions. These aren't just rituals. They are roots. There's a quote I love. We don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. So ask yourself, what are the systems you've built to return to yourself? What are the quiet habits shaping your future peace? Because here's the truth. When you consistently nourish your inner life, just like watering a seed, it grows. It becomes strength. Not flashy, not loud, but steady. The kind of strength that doesn't flinch when chaos shows up. The kind that doesn't need to prove itself by arguing, defending, or lashing out. The Buddha didn't teach shortcuts. He taught a way of being. A way of meeting the world not with resistance, but with clarity. Not with reactivity, but with presence. This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming deeply yourself, without the noise. It takes time. But every time you choose not to react, every time you sit in discomfort and breathe instead of blame, you're building that muscle. You're becoming more free. So don't worry if you still lose your temper sometimes, or spiral into old patterns. It's okay. The point isn't perfection. It's practice. It's choosing to return, again and again, to the breath, to the stillness, to the observer inside you. True freedom is choosing your response. Peace isn't something the world hands you. It doesn't come from perfect days, kind people, or quiet mornings. Real peace begins the moment you decide how to meet the world. We can't control what happens, but we can control how we show up for it. We can choose silence over arguing, stillness over reaction, compassion over ego. There's a simple yet powerful teaching from the Buddha. You are not your anger. You are the awareness that sees it. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to remember that each moment gives you a chance to return. Return to yourself. Return to the calm that was always within you. Call to action. If this video brought even a moment of stillness to your day, subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who needs it today. And leave a comment. What helps you stay calm when you feel angry? We are all walking this path together. One breath, one choice, one mindful moment at a time. See you in the next video. And until then, stay gentle, stay grounded, stay awake.